Andre, battery minerals have continued to be top of mind, especially for people that are in the mining sector. So, I mean, let's just unpack the topic a bit more. Just starting from basics, what are battery minerals?
So battery minerals specifically refers to the commodities required for the production of rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. And that's mostly used in your portable electronic devices, but maybe more significantly also in your electric vehicles and in your stationary storage applications. So depending on the battery chemistry, your metals in focus differs and depends. So you get your better known commodities like nickel, cobalt, and manganese that are quite commonly used in certain battery chemistries, but then also your more historically niche commodities like lithium and graphite. So importantly, the use of these battery metals potentially goes beyond just the definition. It seems quite narrow because when you look at an electric vehicle, it typically uses 6 times the metal inputs of a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle. So it's a broader group of metals that are going to be fundamentally impacted by your shift to EVs. And that includes copper, tin, aluminium, and rare earth elements as well.
Thinking about how much the demand is going to be as we move forward, especially with climate change and transition. What do you think from a supply perspective? Are we ready for it? Do you think you foresee a potential supply deficit?
Yes, as mentioned, the electric vehicles are quite metal intensive. And the consequence of that is that your usage is going to go up. And the market has definitely been surprised by the rapid transition to EVs. So if you look at some of the commodities, they have already existing large established liquid markets like nickel and copper, for example. So the relative impact on their commodity prices has been quite muted when you compare it to your traditionally smaller markets like lithium and graphite, where that certainly hasn't been the case. So some estimates forecast that the graphite and lithium markets have to grow by a factor of 6 or 7 times by 2030 in order to meet the growing battery demand. And the best example of that is potentially the lithium carbonate spot price, which has increased by 700% since 2020. And that gives you an idea that the impact of the shift to EVs is having on your traditionally smaller markets for these niche commodities. But as we know, they're becoming more in focus with a lot of market attention shifting to lithium, graphite. So there's definitely the risk that a supply deficit for some of your key battery metals will persist for the remainder of the decade. And if that's the case, we could end up with an environment where we have higher commodity prices for longer in order to incentivize new supply entering the market until we get to a point where we have a slightly more balanced demand-supply dynamic.
Okay, so I mean, if you look at the continent, nickel and cobalt are probably the most known or most mined and who have a history commodities. If you may then think about the other niche ones, I mean, do you think in considering what we currently mine and what is known and has been defined, do you think Africa has a role to play in just those two, but overall, even the niche ones that are now coming up to have more focus?
I think definitely, if you consider the risk of supply deficits persisting and the impact that can have on your commodity prices, with high prices persisting now, as we've mentioned, then it provides a great opportunity for viable projects on the continent to enter the market a little bit sooner than what they might have been able to historically. And Africa has a great pipeline of development stage battery metal assets. So the potential is there. I mean, you mentioned a few of the commodities the continent's already known for. The leading producer of cobalt and manganese, which are key in your batteries, and also one of the dominant suppliers of copper. But interestingly, it's generally considered that Africa is underexplored for some of your more niche commodities like lithium, graphite, and even nickel to an extent. So if you consider that Tanzania and Mozambique have quite recently emerged as a potential future leader in the supply of graphite outside of China, then you get an idea of the impact that if a bit of capital flows into the continent and exploration is conducted and these projects are advanced, the potential for certain geographies to impact the supply-demand dynamics. And although lithium is probably a little bit more in the earlier stage in terms of the impact for the African continent, there is a growing portfolio of projects that's attracting a lot of global interest and a lot of capital inflows. And lithium is a bit more geographically diversified across the continent as well. You've got projects in Mali, the DRC, Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Namibia. So I think if you look at it holistically across all the commodities, there's definitely a role Africa can play in the supply chain feeding the electric vehicle market.